In 1893, in Oberlin, Ohio, a new organization had been established to fight the evils of alcohol, the Anti-Saloon League. It would turn out to be the most effective political pressure group in American history. The founder of the League was the Reverend Howard Hyde Russell. Unlike Francis Willard and the WCTU, Russell was determined that his organization would focus on a single goal: to get rid of alcohol, period. Town by town, county by county, state by state, they would force America to go dry. The Anti-Saloon League is not in politics as a party, one leader said, nor are we trying to abolish vice, gambling, horse racing, murder, theft, or arson. The gold standard, the unlimited coinage of silver, free trade and currency reform do not concern us in the least. The League liked to call itself the Church in Action Against the Saloon. Baptists and Methodists formed its heart, but every Protestant denomination signed on, except the Episcopalians and the Lutherans.
I am of Lutheran heritage, German Lutheran. It wouldn't have occurred to them to oppose beer, and they really resented the Methodists and the Baptists who imposed prohibition on them. So a lot of smart cracks came from both sides, and one of them was that Lutherans drank openly and praised God secretly, and the Baptists praised God openly and drank secretly.
The Anti-Saloon League was more or less modeled on the modern corporation that was already transforming American business. It had a national headquarters to direct its campaigns, a salaried full-time staff to oversee thousands of volunteers, ample financing from millions in annual dues, as well as church collections, and a printing plant at Westerville, Ohio, that churned out 300 tons of propaganda every month.
The Anti-Saloon League was one of the first modern political movements in the United States. Like the Women's Christian Temperance Union, like most suffragists, they truly believed that alcohol was a drug that was being pushed on consumers. That once you eliminated the pusher, that people would stop drinking because temperance was the natural state of humans.
Any politician who dared oppose the League, Howard Russell promised, would live to regret it. The Anti-Saloon League, he said, was formed for the purpose of administering political retribution.
Because they had such a devoted following, a following that was moved by religion, and there's no more powerful force to get people to act, they were able to say to politicians, are you with us or are you against us? And if you are against us, we will defeat you. And if you are with us, we will elect you. And they were able to do it. And they were able to do it in state after state after state.
What a wedge issue that's effective does is it forces you to stand up and say, I'm for this or I'm for that. I'm for alcohol or I'm against alcohol. And this kind of a position that you're required to take can be a tremendously powerful political tool, but it's also profoundly divisive, because that's the whole point of it. The whole reason you have a wedge issue is to drive a wedge between people and make them stand up and take a stand on one particular issue. And this elevates that issue in importance above everything else, no matter how important the other issues really are.
The man who made it all work was Wayne Bidwell Wheeler, the Anti-Saloon League's ablest commander. The person, one associate said, who can make the Senate of the United States sit up and beg.
He looked like a bank teller, Wayne B. Wheeler, a name that at his death in the 20s, people said he will be remembered forever as one of the most important people of our time. He was the one who figured out that if you stick to an issue and you really sell that issue, you can get what you want.
Wheeler was an Ohio farm boy who had lost an uncle to alcohol and had himself been injured by a drunken farmhand wielding a pitchfork. He liked to say that God made the country, but man made the town. He was ideally suited to lead what became, at least in part, a crusade by rural Americans against the big cities. Recruited by Howard Russell at Oberlin, he began his work on a bicycle, spinning from door to door to defeat an anti-prohibition candidate for the state Senate. As the organization grew, Wheeler quickly moved up in the ranks. He was a skilled lawyer and a shrewd, calculating political operative, willing to work even with politicians who drank, so long as they were willing to vote to keep others from doing so. Some old-time temperance crusaders were horrified at the tactics he used and the company he kept. He didn't care.
He didn't need to win majorities. He needed to win at the margin. So if Wheeler could get, for the Anti-Saloon League, 10% of the voters in that state to vote wherever he told them to vote, he could control the state. He didn't need 51%. He only needed the margin that one party needed to control the legislature.
Wheeler targeted 70 state legislators in Ohio who opposed the League, and by 1903 had driven every one of them from office. In 1905, when Ohio's popular Republican governor Myron T. Herrick, himself a reformer, dared try to weaken a so-called local option law that allowed each community to decide for itself whether to prevent alcohol from being sold, Wheeler denounced him as the champion of the murder mills, unleashed the full fury of the League, and crushed him at the polls. Throughout the country, anxious politicians in both parties began warning one another. Remember what happened to Herrick. The lessons that have been taught by this contest are important, Wayne Wheeler said. Never again will any political party ignore the protests of the church and the moral forces of the state. The League's power spread steadily, eventually reaching into all 46 states, overshadowing the women's groups that had been working for temperance for decades.
The old Prohibition weepers and gurglers were quite incapable of this enterprise. But the new janissaries of the Anti-Saloon League, they understood the soul of the American politician. They knew that his whole politics, his whole philosophy, his whole concept of honesty and honor was embraced in his single and insatiable yearning for a job. And they showed him how, by playing with them, he could get it and keep it, and how by standing against them, he could lose it. H.L. Mencken.
In 1909, Wheeler had help from an unexpected quarter. City dwellers with a nickel to spare could see something new in the world, a motion picture version of 10 Nights in a Barroom, an old stage melodrama that had been the Uncle Tom's Cabin of the temperance movement and a staple of small-town entertainment since before the Civil War. The film embodied every temperance fear: a drunken husband squandering his pay, the tragic injury of the daughter sent to bring him home, the last ghastly stage of alcoholism, the agony of delirium tremens. The film helped to reinforce the belief that even one drop of alcohol could destroy not just individuals, but whole families.